In Iqaluit this evening after a bomb threat on social media. The plane was flying from New Delhi to Chicago when the airline says it made an emergency landing out of caution. Samuel Watt has more.
This is the fourth threat Air India says it's received in recent days. Other Indian airlines have also been targeted. The previous ones, though, were all hoaxes. This one, that prompted an emergency landing in Iqaluit at 5:20 this morning, is still under investigation. Nunavut RCMP doesn't have an explosive detective unit, and an Iqaluit airport spokesperson says passengers aren't allowed to leave the international security zone. Local restaurants are delivering dozens of pizzas to the 211 passengers and crew who've been stranded for hours. CBC understands they'll spend the night in Iqaluit while investigations continue, though there's no word on how long that will take. Air India says it's considering legal action against those responsible for the threats. Samuel Watt, CBC News, Iqaluit.
This is all happening as tensions between the Canadian and Indian governments are on the rise. Today, the RCMP is urging people to come forward with any information they might have about the targeting of 6 separatists in Canada. Yesterday, the Mounties said Indian officials here have been linked to acts of murder and other violent activity. Kate McKenna reports.
Shocking allegations that left Canadians reeling.
The mere thought of organized crime being orchestrated by a foreign government directed at Canadian citizens and residents is abhorrent.
This is unacceptable.
The Prime Minister and the RCMP have accused the Indian government of being linked to widespread violence, including murders, attacks, and threats in Canada targeting Sikh activists.
It's concerning that a country would go to that length on foreign soil, orchestrating, as I said yesterday, harassment, intimidation, coercion, even homicides.
The RCMP allegations that were shared, the information that was shared yesterday, are deeply, deeply disturbing.
6 Indian diplomats were expelled, alleged to be persons of interest in criminal behavior and accused of gathering information and intelligence on targets.
We formally requested that India waive diplomatic immunity for 6 individuals based here in Canada and for India to cooperate in the investigation. This was done so that these individuals could be questioned.
But India refused.
The breadcrumbs seem to all go back to the High Commission and the consulates.
Today I'm rising to inform the House of an extremely serious matter.
More than a year ago, the Prime Minister told Parliament authorities believed India was tied to the killing in British Columbia of pro-Khalistan leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Now, a senior government source says they also believe Indian officials may be linked to the death of Winnipeg man Sukhdev Singh Gill. But India vigorously denies the accusations made by Canada, widening the rift between the two countries. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
So that is the broad picture. Now, on the ground in Iqaluit, where the Air India passengers still are, we do now have confirmation from RCMP that explosive specialists have arrived in Iqaluit and they are assisting local police. Earlier this evening, the CBC spoke to some of these passengers who've been stuck inside Iqaluit Airport security zone for more than 12 hours, and tensions were high.
The pilot announced initially that there was a technical difficulty and that they had to land in Canada. Then later on they told us that there was a bomb threat, but it was a Twitter-based threat.
Understand, there are like 200 people, like there are elderlies, there are infants, there are people like who are sick. Everyone's stuck here. You'll see plenty of people lying down on the floors. Like people are starting to feel feverish. Their bodies are starting to give in.
There are a lot of patients here. We've been stuck here since 5 a.m. in the morning. We're really, really disappointed by Air India because nothing has been done. There's no communication at all. Zero communication.
Huge disappointment, Air India. When you have no information, you can imagine what we be feeling.
Thanks to no phones, we actually made some human contact. We made friends. We have a WhatsApp group going. We did make some good connections and had some positivity, just having some fun while we are all in this together, waiting. We had like kids taken care of, the elderly taken care of a little bit, so it wasn't as bad.
Huge kudos and thanks to the staff of the Iqaluit Airport. They attended to every single aspect of what is needed for stranded passengers, which we greatly appreciate, okay? Kudos, big cheers to the airport staff, guys.
Yeah.
The search is back on for a missing man after a boating accident near Kimmirut, Nunavut. A father and son set out looking for soapstone on Friday morning. Their boat then struck an object near Big Island. The body of a man in his 20s was recovered, but his father is still missing. That search was called off on Sunday evening. Rosie Akabak is a local search coordinator. She says there were funding issues from Ontario's Joint Rescue Coordination Centre and Iqaluit Search and Rescue. The community had planned to press ahead with its own search before this update today.
I received a phone call that the funding is still a go-ahead after I posted on Facebook asking for donations, any kind of donations. Someone had seen my post and had complaints forwarded to the minister, I believe.
Akabak says that funding will be extended on a day-to-day basis. In Dawson City, a long-running dispute between the town and its mayor is headed to court. It's a disagreement over property lines, but as Chris McIntyre reports, Mayor Bill Kendrick says the timing is curious.
Now, this issue started over a decade ago when Kendrick bought his property at the north end of town in 2009. Now, the lawsuit says that Kendrick knew that some of his house was on city-owned property. Kendrick acknowledges the issue, but according to the suit, has done nothing about it. For years, negotiations between the town and Kendrick went nowhere. The town offered Kendrick a license to occupy the land in question, but he didn't agree to the terms. Fast forward to 2021, Kendrick still hadn't resolved the issue when his septic tank failed. Without proper approval from the city, he replaced the septic tank, which was on town-owned land. The town offered a 1-year license to occupy the land so Kendrick could clean up the spill, but once again, Kendrick declined to sign the agreement. By this past August, town lawyers presented Kendrick with a final chance to sign the license. But once again, he declined, and the matter landed in court. Kendrick says the timing of this lawsuit is suspicious as it came just a week before the municipal election. He also says that there are numerous properties around town that don't match up to survey data. Nobody from the town was available to comment on the suit, and none of these allegations have been tested in court. Chris McIntyre, CBC News, Dawson City.
The town of Norman Wells NWT is pushing the territorial government to declare a state of emergency in the Sawtooth region. The town is coping with a jump in the cost of living caused by the cancellation of resupply barges this summer. As a result, fuel, food, and other goods are being flown in at a much higher shipping cost. Frank Pope says the barge cancellations essentially made his community fly in only with a short and unreliable winter road season.
We're talking about winter road season going to solve all our problems. I met with people the last couple of days from, I think it was Polituck and Joehaven. No snow, no ice, nothing. You know, they're waiting for Skadoosie to go out and do the hunts. You know, and there's not even ice along the shoreline up in the ocean.
Norman Wells Council is hoping the NWT government will declare a state of emergency for the Sawtooth later this week when it returns to the legislature. Pope says that will trigger additional support from the federal and territorial governments. The Association of Yukon Communities says the territorial government has halted critical funding. For 3 decades, municipalities have used money from the Community Training Trust to help employees gain new skills. But now, that pot is running dry. Cheryl Kawaja has that story.
The Association of Yukon Communities, AYC, is a voice for municipalities across the territory. Executive Director Bonnie Dixon says municipalities, particularly rural ones, have depended on a long-standing training fund for essential jobs.
Training could include bulk water delivery, first aid, boiler operations, landfill operations, things like that.
But the AYC says the funding has come to a halt.
AYC for the past 3 decades has received funding from the Yukon government to provide training opportunities to municipal and First Nations government staff. And we were informed this summer that that funding was going to be discontinued. The reason we were given was that the funding no longer met the current priorities of the labor market.
Dixon says on average, the cost of training and accreditation courses has run about $60,000 to $70,000 a year. In Teslin, the acclaimed mayor, Gord Curran, says it's another example of death by 1,000 cuts for municipalities. And already, tight municipal budgets are getting tighter. In Carmack's, outgoing mayor Lee Bodie agrees.
It's, it's a big hit for us.
What are your concerns if this money isn't there?
They're not going to get all the training that they really need. Is my concern, I guess. These are very specific jobs for wastewater treatment and landfill operations. You don't want to make a mistake with sewage, you know. It has to be done right. So, I'm concerned about that.
Meanwhile, the Association of Yukon Communities says it will continue to advocate for more support. CBC reached out to the Yukon government and did not hear back by deadline. Meanwhile, voters in all Yukon municipalities go to the polls this Thursday. Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
A consulting firm hired by the city of Yellowknife to do a housing needs assessment says it's more expensive to rent a home in the NWT capital than official data would lead people to suspect. Urban Systems says that's because the data comes from rental groups in the city and not from independent listings. It told a city council committee about its findings today. One city councillor says the assessment is long overdue.
We own a lot of this fault, and administration owns a lot of this fault. Like we haven't really looked at many outside the box solutions for the problems that we're having. And hopefully now we got some money from the feds. Finally, there's money that's going to be for something good.
The firm still needs to find out precisely how much people are paying to rent homes in Yellowknife. It'll also look at what kinds of rentals units people want to see on the market. The assessment is expected to be completed by the end of this year. RCMP says officers are getting daily reports of petty crime in Yellowknife. RCMP Staff Sergeant Byron Donovan says the city is seeing an increase in property crime. He says that includes theft from vehicles and theft of vehicles themselves. Donovan says it's part of a national uptick in petty crime in major Canadian cities. He told the CBC's Hillary Bird why he thinks this is happening.
Again, speaking from my experience and previously, is that oftentimes the smaller property crime is related to the drug-related offenses because people need money or need something to trade for the drug that they may be using. And when this happens, oftentimes we see the property crime increase when drug-related offenses increase as well.
And that's what you've seen is drug-related and property crime increase sort of at the same time.
Absolutely. I think we've been doing a pretty good job of doing media releases when we've been doing some of our drug enforcements. I know in September and August we were able to execute some search warrants and not only take drugs and money off the street, but also illegal firearms off the street in Yellowknife as well. So,
Donovan says the RCMP have started a crime reduction unit for the Northwest Territories. He says it'll be able to move from community to community and focus on these kinds of property crimes. Donovan says the unit is brand new and they're just putting the team together now.
The dirty underbelly of capitalism is exploitation.
They're making more money than they have ever made in the history of the music business.
We have generation after generation of us not seeing a fair piece of the pie.
How do we keep the money from Black music in Black people's hands?
Never got paid, never got their due, never got their acknowledgement, never got their awards, never got their flowers.
Don't miss Paid in Full, a 3-part series. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Release him.
Why?
Well, I would say it's extremely bad form to arrest your new boss.
This man is actually in my custody.
What did he do?
Well,
Did you hear that? I'm being charged with,
This ranch isn't going down. Not on my watch.
pounding. This is very hard to do.
Where am I?
We both know it's not an easy task.
The Great Canadian Baking Show. Watch free on CBC Gem.
If the car comes with the deal, I'm in.
Cheers, dragons!
I look forward to fighting you on many a deal.
And we look forward to meeting you. Dragon's Den. Watch free on CBC Gem.
The question is,
And I'm just going to ask,
I want to ask you, but
why is this such a big deal? What does the science say?
what was their reaction?
What are we talking about here?
Who told you?
So, to be clear,
what is the actual story there?
I think we can explain.
CBC North Radio 1 Distro Dene Aurikela Tile Serato Northbeat October.
The government of the Northwest Territories is taking steps to re-establish regular dental health services in small communities. But the lack of regular care is already taking a toll. One NWT dentist says dealing with faulty equipment is a good first step for the government. Francis Tessier-Burns has that story.
It's been 2 years since the Territory has had contracts to offer dental services in remote communities. Despite that, the Department of Health said it has still sent dentists out on a case-by-case basis to, quote, alleviate backlog. Jessica Francis is a resident in Fort McPherson. She and her daughters were seen earlier this year after a long wait.
After we got seen in April, they referred one of my daughters to Edmonton, and she had to get several teeth removed and several teeth worked on because of cavities that had just gotten out of control because we hadn't been seen.
Francis was also one of the patients that was recently told to get tested due to possible infection from dental equipment that wasn't properly cleaned and sterilized. Pirio Friedman is a dentist that has traveled to NWT communities for over a decade to offer her services. She says equipment maintenance has been a long-standing issue and is one of the factors that makes it difficult to do dental work in the communities.
So, to have better equipment, better maintenance, that would probably be easier to get dentists going there.
The Territory is working to get regular dental visits in communities again. In September, it awarded 2 contracts to companies to visit communities and repair any faulty equipment. Contracts for actual dental work are expected to come after that early next year. In the past, the Territory has had trouble getting dentists to bid on travel contracts. Dentists that travel to remote communities are mostly paid through non-insured health benefits at a lower rate than in private clinics. Friedman says those lower rates are another barrier to getting dentists to work in communities. The Department of Health says it's working with Indigenous Services Canada to address equipment issues and make contracts more flexible for dentists. Francis Tessier-Burns, CBC News, Yellowknife.
The Yukon Women's Midlife Health Clinic turns 10 this month. The clinic supports Yukon women who are near menopause, and it's also a sexual health clinic. The clinic's founders spoke about what has changed for nurse practitioners in the past decade.
Sean and I were part of the steering committee for the implementation of nurse practitioners in the Territory. So regulations came about in 2013, and 2014 was when the clinic opened. So we were the second and third nurse practitioners hired in the Territory at the time.
I actually helped write the legislation and the regulations. I graduated in 2006, and nurse practitioners were just like a pipe dream. I'm most proud of the services that we provide, and that's reflected in like our wait times or just what you hear on the street. I feel very thankful for our opportunity to work collaboratively with other providers. Like Michelle said, we've got a pharmacist, we've got a pelvic floor physiotherapist. We work very closely with physicians. It's something that back, 10, 20 years ago was like, it was sort of just talked about on paper, and I learned about it in school, but I didn't know if it would ever come to fruition, and it's definitely there, so it's fantastic.
And I think that the clinics, both the Midlife Clinic and the Sexual Health Clinic, have been able to fill a space in the community that was missing. For the Midlife Clinic, it was obvious around menopause and women's midlife health. And then for the Sexual Health Clinic, beyond birth control and cervical cancer screening and stuff, we've been able to create a really robust transgender health program to the point where I have about 80 patients, and we've become an internationally known safe place for people for gender-affirming care.
Those were the founders of the Yukon Women's Midlife Health Clinic. The clinic turns 10 this month. The PanArctic Vision Song Competition was held this past weekend in Nuuk, Greenland. 10 artists from 10 different circumpolar countries competed, including artists from Nunavut. The CBC's David Gunn and Igalak host Eva Michael bring us the story from Nuuk.
My name is Amund Sjølisveen. I am the Artistic Director of PanArctic Vision. PanArctic Vision is a musical event. It's an event where we gather musicians from all around the circumpolar north. This is the second edition of the PanArctic Vision, and we are now in Nuuk, Kalaalleq Nunaat, where artists, musicians from the north can be part of this on their own terms, from their own northern territories, without looking south, without being concerned about these capitals, these nation states. Black metal from Iceland, throat singing from Nunavut, pink pop from the Faroe Islands, and then we have yoik from Sápmi. The variety of music is so great, and you're taken on this roller coaster ride from one thing to another throughout the Arctic. To me, it's important to gather all these people from around the Arctic because I think that we share some experiences that we do not often talk that much about. I mean, we share climate and those kind of things. There's lots of snow and all that, but we share that experience of being far away. We share that in our national context, we are periphery, all of us.
My name is Kachung Blanchette, and I'm from Mamtariqluk, Alaska, southwestern part of Alaska. I'm Yupik, Inuit, right? But my father is also black. So I come from two very different cultures. Originally, my first band is a band called Bamiwa. We sing songs that are based on our traditional drum dances from the Yupik tradition. I'm here as a soloist. It's rare that we have this circumpolar connection, right, of all of us around the world and the globe from the north coming together, indigenous, non-indigenous, being a part of countries and communities that just have to operate differently because we are from the north and things are just tougher.
So our duo name is Iva and Ango. So Iva after Ivaluaktuk and Ango after Angogatiak.
We perform traditional Inuit throat singing, and tonight we'll be doing a number of songs in one.
So we chose some of our favorite songs and we put them together in a medley.
When we throat sing together, we often flow from song to song anyway, naturally, because it's very playful and fun.
And traditional throat singing is very, it's pretty quick. It's very much a competition. And I think with our style of contemporary throat singing, we're a little bit more fluid. We tend to slow down. We tend to do a little more sing-songy ways.
I think one of the fun things that we realized was that our act is the only act that isn't backed by a band or soundtrack. But we realized that we come and we bring all the sounds within our body. And I think that it just goes to show how strong and powerful Inuit women are and our songs are, and the long tradition that throat singing has, and just carrying that energy on stage will be really fun.
Looking at the map over the Arctic, you'll see very fast that Russia is half of the Arctic, both in terms of territory, but also in terms of population. All of those things makes it very important for us to include also the Russian Arctic. Obviously now that's difficult with the situation. It's impossible to cooperate with any institutions inside Russia. So we have looked for exiled Russian artists and musicians. And Shenya Goman, which is with us here, he lives in the north of Norway.
I think it's important that there's a representative of the Russian part of the Arctic here at PanArctic Vision. It is important that it's an anti-war representative, the one who is trying to use its art, or his art, my art, to say something against what's happening in that country.
The winner of the prize for this year's most revolutionary song, Evgeny Goma. The winner of the prize for the most Arctic song, Eva and Andrew.
It feels amazing.
Yeah. The Arctic people have made their choice, and the choice is that the next edition of the PanArctic Vision will happen in Nunavut.
A lot of people are going to be excited to come to Nunavut. It's such a beautiful place. Iqaluit is amazing, and Inuit are gracious hosts, so yeah, it's going to be great.
See you in Nunavut next year, everybody.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
Release him.
Why?
Well, I would say it's extremely bad form to arrest your new boss.
This man is actually in my custody.
What did he do?
Well,
Did you hear that? I'm being charged with,
This ranch isn't going down. Not on my watch.
I know that I've been reckless, but it won't happen again. I love my daughter so much. I just need a chance to prove myself. Hello?
What'd you do?
I'm a thief.
This is a proposed corridor for multiple pipeline projects.
You're crossing our territory on two ends of your pipeline. Who gave you permission?
Pipelines break of the pipelines would destroy water and everything in it.
They gotta come through us first.
Is this an immediate evacuation order for all Coastal GasLink employees? I feel like we are at work. It's just all been building up to this point.
Yenta on The Passionate Eye. Watch free on CBC Gem.
They're making more money than they have ever made in the history of the music business.
We have generation after generation of us not seeing a fair piece of the pie.
How do we keep the money from Black music in Black people's hands?
Holy crap, I'm here! Heart is pounding. This is very hard to do.
Where am I?
We both know it's not an easy task.
The Great Canadian Baking Show. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Q with Tom Power. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.